Thank you for inviting me to speak on Open WEMI. WEMI, of course, is the work expression manifestation, an item that you're all very familiar with from FRBR initially, and then from the Library Reference Manual. Both of these, FRBR and LRM, had some primary influences in technologies from the 90s. FRBR in particular of relational database design, and LRM from object-oriented data design. Relational database design, I'm sure many of you have had to learn about it, breaks everything down into very specific and unique tables. Each table represents something, and within each table you have your data elements. There is no overlap, and the same data element can't be in more than one table. Object-oriented design is very similar. In this, instead of calling them tables, they call them classes, but again, it breaks your metadata into these boxes, each of which has certain data elements. WEMI is part of a model, a precise model for library catalogs, and only library catalogs. You can tell that it follows this kind of precision and this kind of control of your data by looking at both the diagrams in FRBR, where things have certain relationships to each other, and also in LRM, you can see with the way that it defines data elements. For example, language is actually 3 data elements, once for each of the entities of expression, agent, and nomen. There's an upside and a downside, of course, as there is to everything, to these technologies. The upside of both of them is that they're very precise. They define your metadata in a way that is complete, and they allow you to have a lot of control over data creation. I mean, one of the real emphasis on these is in data creation and data validation. The downside of them, of course, is that they're inflexible, that they require completeness. So there are certain things that you absolutely have to have, even if you don't know what they are. You have to, put in blanks. They aren't easily extended. To extend them, you have to actually modify the model. They pretty much can only exchange with people using the same or very similar models. They aren't very open to interoperability. And I want to note here, and I give it as a downside, although you might not consider it a downside, which is that they each define the structure of your metadata. And of course, they were designed for a single application, which is library catalog data. The idea for Open WEMI is quite different. The idea being that we would free WEMI from this particular application profile, which is how you could see it, and allow WEMI itself to have a more flexible use. And for this, I think it'll become obvious that this could move the entire concept of WEMI into the RDF realm. So this came to me because WEMI has been discovered outside of libraries. I keep finding places where people have either used it or refer to it or try to incorporate it. And those are not people creating library catalogs. In fact, some of them have very different metadata needs to what we have in libraries. So I'm going to give you just a few examples here to give you an idea of the breadth at which people have made use of these concepts. The first one is FABIO, the FRBR-aligned bibliographic ontology, which is part of the CITO, the citation indexing vocabulary, oriented very much toward academic materials. What they've done is they have subclassed Fabio work to FRBR work, whereas FRBR work is very general. Fabio work is restricted really to academic materials defined in a certain way. And of course, they've done this as well for expression, manifestation, and item. In addition, then, Fabio work has many subclasses of types of works and manifestations and items. And it subclasses these. So essay, report, and scholarly work are subclasses of Fabio work. And so it's using the WEMI really to describe all the way along the types of materials it has. In order to make this work and in order to be flexible, Fabio has defined relationships between that go beyond the work, expression, manifestation, item relationships of FRBR, but it defines relationships from, say, work to item and work to manifestation. These can be very, I know that it seems like, how could you have that? But there are two reasons. One is that the kind of material that you're dealing with may not easily fit into things like expression, manifestation. What if you are modeling something that is not, is of a whole, like a painting, that you can't really break it down into these parts easily? Or what if simply your point of view doesn't break them in this way? The other reason that this is interesting is that it allows you to fill in, to provide data, even if you don't have all the data, and you can fill it in at a later date. And as I said, one of the advantages of RDF, the way it can be used, is to allow you to have missing data without violating your model. Music ontology does something very similar to Fabio. It subclasses to FRBR work, expression, manifestation, and item, of calling them musical work, manifestation, and item. And therefore, it has these same capabilities of using WEMI, but using them for a particular type of material. An interesting element is the I can't pronounce it, but the XML schema for legal documentation. This, of course, looks very different to what I've just shown you because it's XML. It is not RDF. But what these people decided and discovered was that WEMI could work for them for tracking all of the relationships between documents that go through a legislative process coming out at the end with a law. So as things go through different committees, different votes, etc. So this is a use of WEMI to to name the elements of a workflow and to follow the flow through. And to me, what's interesting about this is that in libraries, we always seem to be working with very static materials, things that have already been published or created. And this instead shows how WEMI can be used for something that is dynamic. And this was probably not ever implemented, but it was an idea of using WEMI to express the relationships between data sets. And these relationships could be determined algorithmically. So which data sets are derived from other data sets, which data sets depend on other data sets, that type of thing. So once again, very different to our library application. And as you can see here, it even allows a manifestation in one work to be derived from a manifestation in another work. And implementation, or an idea that I found very interesting, was someone did an analysis of the book numbers from Ranganathan's colon classification. So we're talking about basically 1930. And they saw that the colon classification very much follows the idea, what we have now expressed as FRBR, which is the classification number being the work, then it goes to language and form, then it gets down to publication information, and then finally copy information. It would be very interesting to take a look at Dewey and at Library of Congress classification and Library of Congress subject headings, and to see how far we can take these ideas in our classifying and indexing. The one that I think is furthest from what we would normally do, normally think of with WEMI, is an ontology done for the fast fashion industry. And in this one, the design by the designer, it becomes the work, and then you have the production plan, exactly what fabric and how it's going to be produced. Then you have the manufacture run, which is the manifestation, and then you get down to the piece. So this kind of stretches what we think of as WEMI, and yet in a really interesting way, it works. So all of these people in some way, all of these ontologies and uses in some way violate what is in FRBR and what is in LRM for WEMI, even though they've made use of the concepts. So what if we could free these people from our definitions of FRBR and WEMI and allow them to make use of these concepts? Well, I think we do it by having WEMI be concepts, not structures, to begin with. That removes a whole lot of the baggage, and therefore these could be defined as RDF classes. We would still want them to express from the most general to the most specific, and we would want the relationships to move from the most general to the most specific. And this is very much similar to what we have in Fabio. I have to admit I copied some from that. The proposal is that we would have 4 classes: work, expression, manifestation, and item. And we need to come up with good definitions for them that don't hinder any uses. And then we have 3 relationships: expresses, manifests, and instantiates. I want to emphasize that using these as RDF classes means that they are not structures. We are talking about class membership, conceptual membership. And so you can have, you can express these classes however you wish. You don't even have to specifically do relationships between them. So you can have a flat bit of metadata, and you can still say that these data elements, title and creator, represent the work. These represent the manifestation, etc. And not everything everything in your metadata has to be within one of these items. You can have all of your administrative data, etc. So it seems to me that this is quite a bit more flexible and would allow a certain amount of experimentation, but in which people use these concepts, the WEMI concepts, to kind of organize their data. And I think even looking at this with just work and item, I think that this organizes the data in a way that the flat structure would not. So, of course, one of the goals is to remove conflicts between different interpretations, and guess who has different interpretations? By seeing this as being class-oriented and not structural, BibFrame, you could still talk about FRBR work elements in BibFrame and FRBR expression elements in BibFrame, even though those aren't the same as BibFrame work, an instance, and item. This is now a Dublin Core working group. The work is being done on GitHub. I need to really get it moving now that we've come back to fall. but you can find it at github.com DCMI Open WEMI. There's a mailing list. You can find that at the opening page. And I have provided a bibliography there that includes everything that I've talked about here and other articles and links that can give you more information on these uses of WEMI. So I thank you and look forward to questions.